Evening, everyone. My name is Pavanjit Aluwalia. Unfortunately, the president, Mr. Sipal Singh, is unable to join due to connectivity issues. He's staying in New Chandigarh, and I believe they've dug up a lot of things up there, and the connectivity just vanished. He was online about half an hour back, and so I'd fill in for him. I'd like to talk a few words about NISSMAT so that we all are familiar with what this organization is doing and has been doing in the past. NISSMAT was formed around 1990, and that is the time when Lieutenant General R.K. Anand and me started this organization. Uh, and it was basically to address the need of training and development for the ex-servicemen of India. So we formed some kind of a alliance with the Director General Resettlements Office, and we started doing training courses for on behalf of the DGR to train armed forces veterans to a second career option. Along with this, we started doing seminars on very topical issues of the day, and where we had a lot of attendees. And this led us to doing security audits and security consulting work, which came into NISSMAT because of the fact that we were considered experts in this area. Over a period of time, we ventured into other areas, and this team on NISSMAT got lost, which we repicked during the pandemic times, when we realized that we need to sort of put this back on tracks. And so Mr. Sipal and I decided to sort of get the ball rolling once again. So somewhere around the middle of 2020, we stepped up doing the webinars. Seminars gave way to webinars. And we started doing webinars where we would do 2 webinars a month on very topical issues. And some of the webinars, we had participations in excess of 850 registrations and people coming in from 25 countries. So this is the 121st webinar and the seminars combined that we are doing. So this is number 121, which is on hiring and firing, a risky business. So NISSMAT today, as we conceive it, has got 4 distinct areas of work. One is the NISSMAT Forum, which is the type of activity that we are doing today. It is in terms of running webinars on various issues. Then we have also started another series called Understand and Be Understood, which are interactive sessions, which we intersperse in between. And we would be doing some award nights and also carrying out certain conferences of on various subjects which impact the world at large. We also are developing a NISSMAT education portal, which would be online education based on various subjects, and we've got the framework moving. So we would be getting that into order in the next couple of months. The third arm would be the NISSMAT enterprise, and we have General Mehta on the screen, who would be heading the enterprise portion of the business. And that would be dealing with the business aspect of what consulting services or anything that NISSMAT may be able to pick up. And the fourth part would be a foundation or a trust where we want to help the underprivileged, the people who don't have the wherewithal or the means like we have, to push them into a greater educational ability where they can sustain themselves and by way of scholarships. So this is what NISSMAT is about. And I would also like to speak something about our president. Our president is a very illustrious person, actually. Unfortunately, he is not here. But Mr. Sipal Singh is a very senior retired police officer who served in very senior positions across the country and has held appointments which have been of great significance. He raised two organizations while in service. One was the Rapid Action Force, which was to deal with the internal security and counterinsurgency measures within the country. And the second, he headed the Internal Security Academy, or he founded the Internal Security Academy in Mount Abu in the state of Rajasthan in India. During his service with the government of India, he was a very distinguished officer. He was awarded the President's Police Medal for distinguished services and also the Indian Police Medal for meritorious services. A police special duty medal with bar. Then he also got a Sena medal, which is an army award in the police services, and a number of other commendations and rewards. So he's a highly decorated individual from the Indian Police Service. After retirement, I remember in the year 2009, he was recognized by no less a person than the President of India as the Security Personality of the Year. He also serves as the advisor to the Asian Professional Security Association, the Indian chapter, and is the Honorary Director General for the Central Association of Private Security Industry in India and the Association of Private Detectives and Investigators. Mr. Sipal's face is very well known in the country. He is a very dynamic security professional who has appeared in a number of interviews at the national television, in the national television channels. So this was about the president. Today's webinar is actually being attended by registrations from 12 countries. I'd like to name the countries so that we are familiar with the type of audience that we have today. One is majority of the people are from India, but we have people coming in from Singapore, Italy, Kenya, the United States, Algeria, China, New Zealand, Spain, Tunisia, UAE, and Vietnam. So it's a very sprinkled sort of a thing. The today's program is sponsored by Premier Consulting and Investigations Limited, and we have the executive director of this company, John Chinatra, on the screen with us. He's graciously sponsored the event. PCIL is a investigations and consulting company, and the program is also supported by Tag Scores, which is an examination assessments company, from Premier Shield Private Limited, which is a security company, India Skills Private Limited. I see the managing director, Deepak Sapra. Where is he? Yes. Thank you, Deepak Sapra, for being a co-sponsor on this event, and JMD Cargo and HubSpot. A word about the subject today. The subject is hiring and firing a risky business. We all know that if we don't choose the people correctly, we would never get the right results. And we also know that if we don't let go of people on time, then the results to an organization would not come in. So both are equally important. And the importance of this lies in how we choose the right people and how we let go the right or the people who are not right. This subject is valid for all types of businesses. It is a business agnostic subject, whether it's a small organization or a large organization. Everybody needs to hire people, but if we hire them with care, it sort of helps the organization. And whether it's a manufacturing organization or a service organization, a hospital or a mining situation, everybody requires to hire correctly. And HR plays a very vital role in all these activities. And today we have two very eminent speakers going to speak to us. The first speaker of the day is going to be Mr. Rajiv Thakur. And let me just, I'd now introduce Rajiv to you all. Rajiv is the Managing Director of Grasic Consultants. He is a marine engineer by profession. After serving 16 years in the Merchant Navy, he left the sea in 1987 to join Hotel Holiday Inn, Crown Plaza, New Delhi, as the chief engineer of India's largest hotel project at that time. He later moved to Gillette as head of engineering for India. In 1991, he started his entrepreneurial journey and he was hired by a Dutch company, Dalsum Wesiap, to set up its first fully automated mushroom plant in the Shimla Hills. In February of 1993, he set up Grassic Search, an executive search firm, the only marine engineer in the country to ever do so. He's a pioneer in the search industry. He was responsible for executing India entry recruitments for McDonald's and Coca-Cola India when they entered India, both of which catapulted the firm to instant success and recognition. Today, Rajiv is a respected career counselor, guide and mentor who has helped people transition careers successfully across industries and roles. An expert change and innovation driver, he has been instrumental in making Grassic the most relevant and successful search firm in India today. He was recently recognized by the Economic Times as amongst the 50 most promising business leaders of Asia in 2021 for his exemplary leadership qualities. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Rajiv Thakur. Rajiv, you are muted. Unmute yourself, please.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I know some of the places you have afternoon or morning, whatever, but here we have evening, so good evening. Thank you, Pavan. Thank you for introducing me. Before I begin, I would like to clarify that while I've been in the executive search business for close to 3 decades, this is my 29th year of running the business, my role at present is of a management consultant who helps people transition careers and spend a major part of my time creating business strategies, mentoring people, and writing on various management topics. My talk today focuses on hiring at mid to top levels, which is our basic area of expertise. We don't do below mid levels, and we go right up to the CEO and CXO levels. My talk today will primarily be India-centric, and some points may not be relevant outside India because the laws are different outside India. But most of what I would be talking would be, you'll be able to equate with that. But as far as the laws and legal part is concerned, it is India-centric. Now, let me start by saying that while we have said hiring is a risky business, in 3 decades, let me tell you, any business per se is risky. A safe business is an oxymoron. There's no such thing as a safe business. But amongst all businesses, the risk in hiring weighs the heaviest because of its very nature of dealing in people. As a business leader, any business leader today will admit that hiring the right talent, is the key to running a successful and sustainable business. The price of wrong hiring is incalculable, and not just in monetary terms, especially at senior levels. Depending on the seniority of the employee, it can set back an organization by months, damage its public image, and put extra burden on the management to undo the damage. Now, the basic risk in hiring arises out of the complexity of it being the people's business. Most other businesses or all other businesses except hiring, whether you are selling a product or a service, what you are selling, a product or a service, is inert. But in hiring business, your product or the candidates that you are looking at are live with their own cognitive abilities. With no two individuals being similar, talent is not something that can be picked up off the shelf. Every individual has to be hired based on matching multiple parameters. Hiring, and this is my personal experience, is a mix of science and art. When I say science, I'm talking of parameters which are quantifiable, which can be measured. So you have parameters like age, qualification, experience, past performance. All these can be measured. But finally, it's the art that comes into play. And by art, I'm talking about the intuitiveness and the gut feel that is required to make the final selection that can play up against an employer. Because you're going, finally, when we are hiring people, I have seen that most of the time, you tend to make a decision in the first 5 or 10 minutes whether this guy is good or not. And then you spend the rest 1 hour trying to justify whether this guy is worth taking forward or not. But your decision has been made in the first 5 or 10 minutes because your gut feel has come into play. Unfortunately, this risk has been enhanced by the flawed processes used in traditional hiring. Now, I'm going to tell you what are these processes and why they are flawed, because they are still being used and everybody uses them. Let's start with a simple job description. An organization creates a job description which states there's a disturbance coming in.
Yes, I think it's okay now.
Yeah, okay. So, an organization creates a job description which states what it wants. So if you see any job description, and all of you are senior people and you've made job descriptions, or you've seen job descriptions for jobs, it states what an organization is looking for, what it wants in an individual. But when you meet a employer, a prospective employer, you get rejected because you don't meet what he doesn't want. And a job description doesn't state what he doesn't want. Hiring managers often write a JD as a reflection of their own experience, ignoring the fact that we are entering an era where the emphasis should be less on ready competence and more on transferable skills. Second point, organizations fail to appreciate the fact that hiring is a two-way street. As much as you assess the candidate, the reverse is also true. A good candidate loses interest if his experience with the organization has been unsatisfactory. During the recruitment process, candidates will remember how they were treated during the interview process, and this will impact the company's reputation and its ability to attract top talent in the future. So this experience that a candidate goes through during the process is very, very important to attract the candidate, which we forget. We tend to forget that he's also assessing you as much as you are assessing him. Third point, with the talent acquisition teams. Now, we all are CEO levels and CXO levels, and we make a JD and we give it to a talent acquisition person who's a junior HR person. So with the talent acquisition teams working around preset parameters which have been given to him by the hiring manager, they do not have the gumption or the courage to pick up right fit candidates that may not necessarily match the given specifications. Now, you have so many good people who don't match the specifications laid down in front of you, and they let go that candidate. Now, what is happening in the industry? We are letting slip good candidates, which is as bad as hiring a wrong one. You cannot allow a good candidate to slip out of your hands. So that's as good or as bad as hiring a wrong candidate. Point number 4, I've always felt that most assessment tools fail to pinpoint the true abilities of an individual to a role in question. These tools are more useful for developmental purposes rather than for selection process. Many people attributes are circumstantial rather than inbuilt and can change with differing environments. You cannot generalize people's attributes. They change within an organization under a different leader. They change from organization to organization. And you cannot generalize them by putting them through a psychometric test or whatever test and take a call on that. Yes, for developmental purposes, you could probably use it. But as a selection process, I have never found it to be successful. Now, we do reference checks. Everybody does reference checks. Reference checks are done on a candidate's last performance. While truly speaking, a candidate should be referenced on his or her ability to perform in the new role. Most companies that hire stars overlook the fact that an executive performance is not entirely transferable because his personal competencies inevitably include company-specific skills, hence reducing referencing to a formality rather than a decision-making process. Now, I'll give you an example. If Pawan was to call me up and say, Rajiv, I'm taking a guy from your company, how is he? Now, I will tell him, how was he in my organization? But in my case, I'm going to ask Pawan, what are you expecting this guy to do in your company? Is he going to lead a team? Is he going to be working independently? What is his role? And based on that, I will tell him whether this guy will fit in with you or not. He did well with me doesn't mean anything. With me, he was reporting to somebody, he had support. Are you going to put him independently? Then I will tell you whether he can handle that independently or not. So the reference check should tell you how he is likely to perform in the role that you're offering him. And that's where we go wrong in reference checks. Then we come to the salary structures. You know, traditionally salary structures are built around levels. We have levels. The structures are built around levels and not competencies. Policies restrict hiring a star performer at an appropriate higher cost. Organizations give a standard raise on last salary drawn rather than on perceived value. So we see the last person's last salary, give him a 10%, 15% increase. We don't see his value and say, okay, you are worth this much to me, and if you are asking me for that, I'm ready to give it to you. One competent go-getter at a higher cost is worth 100 incompetent do-nothings at lower salaries. Today, a new factor has come in, which has added to the hiring woes, and that is the emergence of a new normal. When an economy goes through a major upheaval, it often creates a seismic shift in how companies operate. The new normal definition alludes to new ways of doing things due to the drastically altered circumstances. The changes being driven by the current pandemic are not elastic and will not regain the old way of functioning. A period of 2 or more years of the pandemic has already expedited the use of technology and changed consumer behavior and experiences permanently. A new virtual world is being created around us, and organizations will be forced to adjust and adapt using new business strategies based on newer formats of communication, marketing, and operational best practices. The new talent pool will be based around these new realities. Now, I want to give you a surprising fact. While the beginning of the pandemic 2020 witnessed mass layoffs and increased unemployment, throwing the talent search business into a downspin. We are all aware when the pandemic started, companies started closing down or started reducing staff, and there were mass layoffs and unemployment went up and people were without jobs. Now, when the recovery mode started, and that was at the beginning of this year, and now at this point, and the second wave was sandwiched in between the two, between January and now we had 2 months of, or 3 months of the second wave, which was mostly April and May. that was stranded in between the recovery mode, we suddenly saw an uptick in our hiring business. Surprisingly, driven by a rush of replacement positions. We were surprised. All the CXO positions that we were getting were replacement for existing people. To our surprise, we witnessed that the people who were assets during pre-pandemic period were turning into liabilities in the recovering phase. They were unable to adapt with agility to the emerging new normal. Now, we have a very, very recent example of the Indian cabinet reshuffle yesterday. India had a major cabinet reshuffle yesterday. You are all aware of it in India. It's a case in point. Where very well-known names were dropped because they failed to meet the challenge of change. The change that took place, they were not able to. We were surprised, how come these big names, Ravi Shankar Prasad and Harshvardhan, all of them were dropped. And this is an example which just happened yesterday. So today, the risk of hiring the right talent, and I'm focusing on right talent. I'm not just saying talent because we need right talent, is at its highest today. As businesses move in a non-linear direction. Now, I'll give you an example when I say non-linear. Normally businesses before 2008 were like driving on a highway. For short periods, you could go on cruise control. Today, and all of you who are into business will agree with me, running a business is like driving on a hill. Every few minutes, there's a change of scenery. The person who's driving the business is continuously changing the clutch and the brake and the accelerator and the steering wheel. It's a continuous movement. It's not just a straight drive. So we are driving a business on the hills. How do you define your talent needs in such a scenario where past is not a guarantee for future performance? Your past performance is absolutely no guarantee because your past performance is what is letting you being thrown out of your companies. So where suddenly the existing stars within an organization are losing their sheen. We at Graphic aren't just a talent provider, but a huge talent consumer. I hire for myself as well. No one appreciates the risk of hiring wrong more than us. For us, a wrong hire not only sets us back monetarily, but can adversely impact our reputation and brand, as each colleague is a brand ambassador to the client organization they deal with. Their competency helps uphold our reputation. Coming to the question of firing, it is usually a result of wrong hiring, unless, of course, you have a problem about integrity or other issues. Normally, firing is done because we hired wrong. Having once hired wrong, there is a need to rectify the fault at the earliest and let go a confirmed, and I repeat, confirmed non or underperformer. I have found companies averse to taking these decisions owing to certain perceived notions. For one, organizations keep hoping for far too long that the person will turn around. Secondly, they worry what other employees will think and how it will impact their morale. The guy may be a nice guy, he's a great guy, he's very friendly with people, but he's not performing and you've asked him to go. It is going to impact his colleagues. Third is a fear that a fired employee is likely to send a negative message to the outside world about the company's culture. A negative post on social media like Glassdoor can damage a company's reputation as a good employer. Most people see Glassdoor and see how people have rated the company. And a negative post can scare people off. And lastly, most of us, especially in India, have a lot of empathy towards our people. We are an empathetic organization. And we find firing a very difficult process. It's not an easy process to fire a person. and hence we shy away from biting the bullet. While firing does carry these risks, it is riskier to retain a non-performing employee for too long. To mitigate the risks of hiring in today's VUCA world, and I suppose all of you understand what is a VUCA: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. In this world, I think I would like to suggest possible solutions. We have spoken about the problem. Let me give you a solution, most of which we ourselves implemented in Grasik and found to be very effective. Now, this is a little controversial question, subject which I'm going to say. I personally am a firm believer that talent acquisition should be moved out of the ambit of HR and report directly to the CEO, as I see it as a business rather than an HR function. There's a management guru, most of you have heard about him in India, called Ram Charan, who in a very famous article a few years ago in Harvard Business Review, titled "It's Time to Split the HR," says, HR can't relate the real world business needs. They don't know how key decisions are made and how they are great, and they have great difficulty in analyzing why people or whole part of the organization aren't meeting the business performance goals. While the global HR fraternity reacted strongly against these views, in the Indian context, this holds completely true. In Grasik, we, the management, are the first point of contact for every potential new hire. Candidates need a great first experience, beginning at the first point of contact, right at the reception, a warm welcome at the reception, and which should last right through the hiring process. Irrespective of the selection or rejection, they should carry a positive message to the outside world. How many organizations have a policy of ensuring a candidate is conveyed a rejection without loss of esteem? We have a very clearly laid down process how we convey a rejection to a person who took the trouble to come and meet us 2, 3, 4, 5 times and has not been selected. Salary negotiation is an extremely sensitive and a critical issue. The old format of offering raise on existing salaries needs rethinking. Organizations should focus more on gauging whether the candidate is capable of delivering value for the salary asked. Here, I agree with Robert Bosch, the founder of Bosch Company, who said, "I don't pay good wages because I have a lot of money. I have a lot of money because I pay good wages." Today, hiring isn't just about sourcing and assessing. It's about influencing and romancing the candidate. He should get excited about the role, the organizational culture, and growth possibilities. No one can do this better than the people at the top, who must focus on pulling in inverted commas, great talent. It saddens me to see, and I've seen this in many cases, companies repelling talent into a fine art. They become talent repellers. People have a first meeting and they don't ever want to go back to the same company. And lastly, if a candidate is trying to sell himself to you with only his past credentials and older accolades, without including present examples and up-to-date proof, you might be dealing with someone that is sharing outdated information and does not have the latest knowledge to help you. If he is talking too much about the past and I've done this, he's of no use to you. But that's the reason he lost his last job. So today, while hiring, you've got to be purely focused on what you can do for the organization in the coming future. You should have an understanding of what the future holds. In the end, I would like to give an advice to every organization. Hiring should be a part of your long-term strategy and not a quick fix solution. It's like dating. Hence, you can completely obviate being wrong at times. I don't know how many of you remember the last time you dated, but you can go wrong on a date. But one thing you must remember, if the individual you hire doesn't fire up, he should be fired out. And one advice I would like to give to the job seekers, which comes in the words of Vince Lombardi, the famous American football coach. And this advice goes to all potential job seekers. If you aren't fired with enthusiasm, you will be fired with enthusiasm. That about sums up how I feel the risk of hiring can be brought down to less painful levels. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you very much. I think it's been a very contemporary sort of a talk, and I think majority of the people listening to you would benefit by it. I would now take time to introduce the second speaker of the day. She's Navleen Kalra, who's going to speak to us from the United Kingdom. Navleen is currently the global HR head for DS Smith, which is the world's largest packaging company. Navleen is a well-rounded senior HR professional with strong strategic and operational experience in diverse industries operating in multiple geographies. She is a strategic professional with solid understanding of business dynamics, who deploys participative management style in fast-paced, highly matrixed, diverse workforce. She is a proactive change agent who spends time in employee environment, encouraging, learning, and promoting increased productivity that results in value-added customer service. She has a reputation for being result-oriented. She's an excellent communicator and skilled at identifying and developing talent. Her expertise is in HR strategy and business alignment, organizational design and restructuring, management, development, change management, leadership coaching, union and employee relations, talent acquisition, and performance enhancement and evaluations. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Navleen Kalra.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and thanks for the brilliant introduction, Pawan. I don't know if I'm that great as if you made me sound, and I'm going to try and speak on this subject after Rajiv has just literally torn apart my functions. So thanks for that, Rajiv. But I do agree with you. To be a good HR leader, you have to be a good business leader first and understand the nitty-gritties of the business. So given that start, I'm going to be talking about hiring and firing and not go too much into the details of the process of it, but I want to start by talking about why hiring is a risky business. So I'm going to share my screen, if you just give me a second here. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, yeah. Put it in the presentation mode.
Yeah.
No, it's fine.
So as Rajiv alluded in his, or very clearly stated, the cost of a bad hire for any business is phenomenal. So when we are looking at the cost of, the total cost of poor hires, the direct costs are easy to calculate. You calculate the recruitment, rehiring fees, you calculate the wasted training cost, you calculate the loss of productivity, and that in itself, as per the latest US studies shows, that is at least 1/3 of the employees' first year of earning cost. This is just the direct cost, but what is even worse is the indirect costs of a bad hire. And for me, that is more of a concern over here because, direct costs, if wrong decisions, sometimes you do it, and let's all accept it. We are all going to make certain bad hiring decisions. Out of all the hiring decisions, at least 20% of them are going to be wrong decisions or bad decisions. So there is, because it is a human process at the end of the day. But what it does to the business is much more because it lowers the team morale. It affects it immensely. It leads to disengagement. A disengaged workforce is not a productive workforce. It causes, the rest of the team, it gets overstretched. Every supervisor who deals with a bad hire is spending about 30% of their time dealing with that bad hire to just then, either correct it, to help them with the performance, to, put pips in place to get them out of the business. So the hidden costs are immense. There is difficulty in attracting new talent. Your customer service could be impacted. All that it leads to is the, impact on your employer branding, whether internally or externally. Because internally, you've made a bad hire, people have come in, people have gone out. The churn impacts the people who are working along with. The supervisor spending so much time with a bad hire impacts the team morale. Externally, any bad hire, again, you've built, it takes time to train, it takes time to build customer relationships, it impacts, your reputation with the customer if you're kind of changing and churning too fast. So the hidden costs are a lot to deal with, which is why hiring becomes a very risky business. So on the top, I've kind of put a diagram around. So, when you terminate an employee, it gives result to a vacancy. A vacancy could be a new position created as well. You hire, there's a couple of weeks wasted. You see the red line over there. Let's say in about 6 to 8 weeks or 12 weeks at times, depending on the role you are in, whether you're in shop floor going through a proper set skills training, or whether you're a more senior member of the staff, there comes a point where there is a ramp up of activity. And suddenly you feel, okay, we've done a job, somebody's picking up. If it is a bad hire for whatever reason, whether it's the cultural fit, whether it is performance, whether it is, skills, whether it is, issues with the team, the ramp up soon starts flattening and the disengagement sets in. Once the disengagement sets in, you have a period of another couple of weeks where you're dealing with that bad hire and you're going in a downward trend. And again, you get into this cycle of vacancy and starting the process again. So this is why hiring becomes a very, very risky business. Now, as Rajiv covered most of the process parts of it, I thought what I will talk more about is if you already have a process in place, and you're consistently making bad hires, one-offs everyone will do. How do we move from that situation? How do we remedy that situation? What is it that we should be looking at within our organizations to ensure that our hiring process from there on is much better? So I think what you need to do is you need to do a deep dive of your hiring process. And I'm talking more internally. As an organization, evaluate what you're doing. Go through every step of the process, do a process map. Do a process map, audit the recruiting, audit the hiring, the interviewing. Are you using any assessment tools? What are the tools you're using? Are they fit for purpose? Is your hiring criteria emphasizing more technical skills and academic credentials? Because this can be an issue. Now, of course, this can be an issue depending on the job that you're recruiting for. If you're recruiting for, a technical skilled worker to run a machine on a shop floor, of course, you're going to, give credit to the technical skills, a bit more weightage. If you're recruiting for, non-technical jobs, for example, do you really want to talk too much about, the technicalities of the job, or are you looking at the fit for the role? Because the fit becomes more important, the cultural fit. The potential becomes more important. The attitude becomes more important. So you need to know, what you're emphasizing on your recruitment process, and does it fit with the roles you're trying to recruit for? Is your process under-evaluating the personality traits, overlooking the workplace preferences, undervaluing the motivations for work? What are the kind of values you have in your organization? Are you actually just kind of going very mechanical and saying, okay, tick box exercise, this person fits this, we're done. Seems like a right fit. What you need to do is dig a bit deeper into what is their motivations for joining the work. Are they looking for a long-term, work? What is it that inspires them? What is the kind of career they're looking for? What is the kind of people they want to work with? What is the kind of boss they'll be able to work at? How do they like to take the direction from their bosses? What is their working style? All these need to be assessed as part of your interviewing and hiring process. So this will, of course, mean, redesign your process. Redesign, it will cost you some, initial cost, because you'll probably be looking at, different assessment tools. You might want to get experts in to help you with, setting up your competency sort of interview frameworks for you, because they're really, really important tools that really help you with the hiring decisions. But in the longer term, once you make a good hire, your costs will be very easily offset, because you'll achieve higher productivity, you'll have a longer tenure of service, and that ways you mitigate your costs very quickly. Now, like I said before, hiring is still a human process. It is still a human endeavor. But what you need to do is calibrate your interviewing skills with the managers. So what I mean by that is every person has an unconscious bias. And I'm not talking about the unconscious bias towards race or color or age. The unconscious bias, we like our kind of people. I've had situations where I've interviewed and I've liked the candidate straight up because they kind of sound like I was when I started work 10 years back. I remember this conversation. We were hiring for a very sort of early career HR professional, and I wanted to get this girl in because she sounded like me. It was me 10 years back. So we all have those unconscious biases, but perhaps she was not right and she wasn't right for the organization I was in at that time. So we have to train our managers and, learn them to understand the unconscious biases that they hold, hiring for the like, they have common interests. I had a MD I worked with in the business, and he's this really fit person into sports and running and all. And one of the questions in the interviews would be, do you run? Do you like running? And I had to really, get on with him and stop him from asking that question again and again and again. That's how unconscious biases creep in. Another important tool to be used is exit interviews. We don't place that much of importance in exit interviews. I've seen many times, we do exit interviews, we stall at them, we do again, we stall at them. But a couple of your critical people, when they're leaving, do the exit interviews, understand what went wrong. And many times you'll come up with things like, I remember a case where it had come up with, I wasn't onboarded properly. And there was some very clear reasoning they gave why they weren't onboarded properly and why they felt, this organization doesn't care for its employees because there is hardly any stress given to onboarding, and that gave them a poor start at the job. So immediately, you start re-engineering and reversing that and taking that feedback into account. Because hiring doesn't start with when you interview and doesn't end with when the person joins in. Hiring starts much before, when you start defining values, your culture, the kind of people you want to take in, you start looking at the market, and you start getting in touch with the potential candidates. And it only ends when the person has been properly onboarded and passed on to, the next stage in their career. So, it's important to remember that bad hires can, when they appear in greater numbers, reveal a whole bigger picture of the organization. It can bring out issues with your culture, with your employees' engagement, and those are the things that you should be tackling. So this is what I wanted to really emphasize on hiring, rather than going on the detailed processes, because of course the process is very important, what you put in the job advert. What is your internal employee value proposition? How do you interview? Are you training your managers? Is your process consistent? Are you taking notes? Do you have competency based questions when you're interviewing? Do you have a consistent process for hiring? How many stages of process you have is another interesting one, because I myself have been interviewed in my career in one organization where I had to go through 13 interviews, and that wasn't at a very senior level. And at a different organization for a much senior level, it was a 3-stage process. And I actually really liked the 3-stage process, and they had set panels up. So how do you set your interview panels up? All these are important criteria to consider when you're hiring. So I'm going to now move on to termination. Firing is a common term which is used in many cultures, but in many cultures, firing is not a term that we use when terminating employees, which is why I prefer to use terminating rather than firing as a general term when I'm talking generically, and it applies across all cultures. Now, there are situations when terminating an employee is the right choice. And I'm not talking about, your disciplinary cases where they've done some gross misconduct and all. Those are no-brainers. You've got to, take the decision then. But there are certain other situations where terminating the employee is the right choice. And of course, inadequate performance, as Rajiv had also said in his talk, if you've got a poor performance, the burden of carrying a poor performer can sometimes be more damaging than actually making them exit the business. So inadequate performance is one of those. When, of course, there will be situations when, you change your structures, you have changed, even though the business is not changing, you've gone through an OD exercise, you've changed your structure, and suddenly a role that was very relevant in your previous structure is not relevant anymore. So that's another reason when you could, get into an exit situation. And the third, most commonly at senior levels that I've seen, is the breakdown of relationship, either with your colleagues or with your manager, leading to a loss of trust. When that situation happens, it's untenable to carry on for both parties. And it's best to get into the situation of, sitting and talking exit. Now, when you're firing or terminating employees, again, there are, costs, which are direct costs, which are significantly higher than when you've made a bad hire as well, especially if you're dealing with a very senior level situation and dealing with high, or big notice periods as well involved in, plus the legal costs that are involved in dealing with it. So the cost of termination is the cost that you have of settlement agreements, or as they are called, golden handshakes in some countries, or as they're called, exit agreements in other countries. Now, why these costs go up is because there are risks associated with every exit you do. And I'll talk about those risks briefly in the next slide. There are direct costs, of course, with the productivity loss, as we're engaging in the discussions weeks before, things have already started going wrong. It's already affecting the productivity. And for weeks to come, till you have then rehired in that position, till the employee morale has been kind of settled a bit for the people around, you're going to experience some productivity loss. And of course, the direct cost of the rehire, going through the vacancies again, advertising, all those costs, assessing, interviewing, all those costs. But again, the indirect costs are even more higher and more critical, because what it does is it causes a lot of low morale. Because especially I've seen in the senior roles, but equally in shop floor level as well. Every exit that you do, impacts the team around, impacts the people around. If you're exiting somebody from the shop floor, I've seen massive impact where unions are involved. Where it can have positive and negative both impact, but I'm talking about the negative ones here, where people are friends with somebody, they don't understand, they start sharing, they start talking bad about the management. When you're talking about senior exits, again, the low morale, because people were looking up to that leader or working with that person, the team was doing something, suddenly, that person is gone. The remaining staff has to stretch themselves for a period of time till you have then filled in that role and trained the person in the new role. So it's an overworked remaining staff, a totally stretched staff. There is a huge damage to the employer brand if not handled carefully. There is a loss of organizational wisdom as well. Let's not forget that. If it's a long-term employee, they carry a lot of knowledge in their heads, irrespective of whatever processes and systems you put in. When you're exiting somebody with 15, 20 years of tenure of service, there's a lot up here that needs that you miss and that you forget, which you have to be very careful how you manage that situation then. So why is firing a risky business? I've talked about the cost, but there are lots of risks involved with firing or termination, as I like to call it. There is risk to the security of the business. You've got in and people have access to your information. You're suddenly in a very uncomfortable position. Better make sure that you've covered all your security risks before you get into a discussion with the employee. If it's senior level roles, make sure that you've spoken to IT, you've looked after You've taken a stock of, whether they have accesses to whatever drives, whether, they have access at home, what is the material they have access to, can they enter the building? If it's a shop floor employee, I remember a shop floor employee who we were engaging with in discussions for an exit, a very disruptive employee who then typically went off sick, but he still had the company fob. We had disabled all of them, but one excess had somehow been missed, and he entered the shop floor at night and created a real ruckus, and the police had to be called in. So be aware of the security risk, because there's lots of risks to your. Are you covered with your IP? In your settlement agreements, have you covered all the risks, concerning the IP, concerning your security, concerning your secrets, everything is covered. There is, of course, a legal risk when you're terminating. There are discrimination claims that could come in, and this is a global risk, of course, different in different countries, but every country has protected categories. So be very careful when you're taking those decisions, and when you're having those, and more careful when you're having those conversations as to what you're saying. There is risk to the reputation, of course. A wrong exit can cause a massive amount of damage to the employer. And there is a risk of retaliation. Some people are going to be in that negative state of mind, and they can do anything to retaliate. They can give especially sales and all roles, if you think about them. How much of business you can lose if you have an irate ex-employee, what damage it can cause you, he or she can cause you in the market. And how do we minimize that risk? So like I said, be very careful, go through every protected characteristic as you're engaging in those discussions, and cover all of them very carefully in the agreement that you do. Do not have any conversations where you are unlawfully discriminating against anyone. That's not the right reason to terminate the employment. Now, length of service is another very, very important criteria. When you're dealing with somebody who's long service, your process needs to be very robust on why they have been selected or why you're engaged, and they are in a position where they could fight a claim against you. And I'll give you an example of a situation that went very bad in one of the organizations I was working in. And without divulging the organization names or employee names, we had a global marketing exec who we had to engage in this discussion to exit the business. She was a female in a manufacturing industry, only one of the four female leaders in an industry which had 400 in the leadership team globally in an organization. And even though the reasons were valid and everything had been covered, and discussions had with legal and with her and everything, she brought a complaint, a claim against the company, a gender discrimination claim. Now, ultimately, she did not win the claim because the process had been so robust, everything had been documented, and there was a lot of work done in sort of fighting every claim of hers, what she had put in. But the amount of reputational damage that caused to the business was phenomenal. It was in news, it was in newspapers, it was clients calling up, customers, big global suppliers and customers calling up and checking what has gone wrong and questioning the company and its policies. There was a lot of work that had to be done to build to mitigate the damage and build the brand back up. So situations like these need to be very, very carefully handled, and which is why they are risky. Another situation which can be very risky, and I think I can take the new name here and everybody can search it, is because it's in news these days, is a company called Brewdog in UK. Now, it exited some of its employees, and these employees had blown the whistle. And the damage it has caused this company, which was on the high for so long, is just, I mean, out of the world. Nobody imagined this. The CEO has had to come and give statements and statements. Their sales have gone down like crazy because the employees spoke about the culture of the organization. So this is why these situations become very risky. And of course, where trade union officials are involved, whether you are exiting them or exiting somebody who's in the union. Again, how you do that is very, very important. So I think whether you are making a bad hire or whether you are exiting an employee, what the most important thing to remember is, yes, it's a human process. Do your homework, get your reasoning very sound, talk to your legal, document every step of the process, and try and answer every question you can. But when it's a firing situation, don't drag it on. Be ready with everything and then talk to them and make a quick decision and a quick answer. So that is all I had, on my talk today. And I think I'll pass it back to Pavanji.
Thank you. The first question goes out to the president who's joined late. Mr. Sipal Singh, if you could ask your first question, please.
Well, I didn't get time, Mr. Moderator, because of the network problem. So I think you'll give me some time to elaborate on the subject before I also ask the question out of the elaboration. The points raised by and covered by both the speakers, as I said, I'll cover it in the closing remarks, are excellent. I only want to bring home certain points from my experience. I was advisor with one very, very renowned group known as Tatas. And they said more than 100 years had passed. Tatas never had any strike. Then all of a sudden there was some problem in the coal mine division. They called me, I was their advisor. And I found why there were no risks of strikes, why the employees were feeling so satisfied. First of all is the hiring process. They had selected their employees. The second was the satisfaction level which was provided to the employees. And third was the welfare-oriented scheme for their families. So it saved them a lot as far as the retention of manpower concerned. There were no many attritions unless the employee wanted to go. Another experience was with a very big group of hospitals. I'll not like to name it, it is one of the biggest group in the hospital industry. I was their advisor. Unfortunately, they landed up in an environment in northern India where some unions instigated the employees, and right in the first or second year, they had to incur losses. The nurses had to go away, that they were attacked, the staff was attacked. So they're not to question that the hiring was not good. The hiring was very good. Most of these people, the nurses, etc., belong to the South, who were very well trained as far as the trade was concerned. Excellent as far as their skills were concerned. But somehow or the other, the environment in which they landed up in the North at that time were not conducive to their psyche. And they were led astray and resulted in the strike. There's the second example, irrespective of the hiring. And the third most important thing which is often said is sharpening the saw. You have hired the people, they are your saw. How are you able to sharpen that saw? Because unless you have got already trained people, but they have to adjust themselves to the environments in the particular organization. And the organizational environment may need it a little different. The sharpening of the saw may be different what they have learned there. So my submission is that irrespective of the fact that firing and hiring itself is a very risky process, because in the process of firing, you are not only losing the trained manpower, you are also getting a stigma on the organization. Because people start thinking that this organization is in the habit of firing people so quickly. So therefore, there is no doubt that there have to be a lot of, I should say, farsightedness, as Rajiv pointed out, certain organizations there who are selecting, etc. But ultimately, all selection is a human process. And there are likely to be some human errors at the time of selection. You may be any, because the human process will have something, some subjectivity will come at the time of hiring. So with these views, I want to request and ask both the speaker, the first speaker, that how do you feel that one candidate which you have selected is an ideal candidate? I have given you how do you presume by the process of hiring that this candidate which you are putting is an ideal candidate as far as the job is concerned? That is my question. It's very difficult. And nowadays, such a psychometric tests have come, they are doing, that is all done, understood. But it is a very, very difficult process. And it is the environment in which ultimately land up that is more important. With these words, I like to ask the speakers to elaborate my point, that is it not the environment which are very more important than the process of hiring, or is it only the process of hiring? And if it is so, if the process of hiring is so important, then is there some ideal way of hiring? There are no flaws likely. Is the candidate going to be ideal for the environment in which he is going to put? This is my question, sir.
Rajiv, can you take it on? Rajiv, you're muted.
Navleen, would you like to answer this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, I'll tell you. One thing is, first thing is, the person who's hiring, does he know what he's looking for? That's my first question. Second, if he knows, can he articulate his needs? The problem is, can you articulate what exactly do you want? So if most of the time, you're looking for an ideal candidate. How do you describe an ideal candidate? How do you pick up? I'll give you an example. I launch a soap in the market, which is not known. It's a soap called X. And if I pick up a guy from Hindustan Levers, who's been selling a hammam soap, which is known to everybody, and I picked up a Levers guy, I made a huge mistake. Because the Levers guy has never been to a shop to tell him to place his product on the top of the shelf and not below the shelf. I need a person who has sold an unbranded product. So if you are aware of what you are looking for, and not just because he's coming from Levers, and you expect him to sell a product which has never been branded. If I open a hotel and I want to sell that hotel, the last person I will look for is from overalls. So overall doesn't need selling. So you got to know very clearly what is your ideal candidate. And the problem is that either you don't know, you mean the organization, or they know but they can't articulate. Because if you can't articulate, then you can't hire, right? So you got to first see, are you looking for the right guy? Will you pick up a Levers guy for a brand which is not known, or an overall guy for a hotel which is not known? Well, he's never sold a product which is not known. Who wants to be sold overalls? Everybody knows overalls. But if I open a hotel called Rajiv Hotel and nobody knows, I don't need overalls guy. So I know exactly what type of person I need for my company. And I should be able to articulate that need down the line to the person. That's very important. And one thing which is there, we keep asking questions to our candidate and they keep answering. I don't believe in that. I want to know what question does the guy ask me. Anybody will tell you brilliance shines through questions, not answers. Can he ask me a question which is to do with my business? Has he understood my business that he asked me a relevant question? My answers he's answering. He has the answers ready. That doesn't give me the correct information about the candidate. But I want to know what questions. So if he doesn't have any questions, he's not interested in my business. So there are a lot of things that we can do we should be sure of who can work in my organization, in my culture. What sort of a culture am I having? You should be able to define your culture. You must be able to fix your culture and find people who will fix in, or you can help him fix. He may be coming from a different culture, but yes, he will be able to fit into my culture. So that's very important.
Thank you, Rajiv. Navdeen, would you like to add something?
I think Rajiv has covered quite well, because what you hire for, in my opinion, is the fit for the organization. And I said that before. So define what the fit is for you. And there are ways you can do it. You get the organizations also grow through many phases. What was right yesterday may not be right today. So
Absolutely.
define what your fit is at that time and moment, is the step one. I think the second thing that is very important in this process is calibrate the interviewers. So have lots of don't rely on one person. See who should be the right panel interviewing, and introduce different sort of people, who can all contribute to the process, and get them together and calibrate and discuss in the end. And of course, it's a two-way process. You're looking for an individual who will fit in your organization. The individual has to make sure that they fit in the organization as well, and it's the right culture for them. So make it very easy for them to ask those sort of questions, to get a feel for the organization. These are just a couple of things you do, but equally, if you are hiring for potential and if you're hiring for attitude, even if they're not your ideal candidate, because, even if there are 60, 70, 80% of the match, work on the rest of the 20%, because that's what, as an organization, you should be doing. If you're found nearly, good candidate, go for it. Because sometimes the search for ideal actually is impractical. It takes too long, it doesn't happen. If they have the potential, if they have the right attitude, if they have the basic skills, get them in and train them for the rest. So that's what I think are kind of things that, help with it. But yes, it is a human process, and you're not going to always get the ideal candidate, and you're not always going to get the right fit. You are going to make some errors, and we've got to be, we've got to accept that and roll with it.
I a little point here. I was recently in the hospital, and we already had, we're getting some sound somewhere. We were involved with the hospital, and the hospital had orthopedic surgery department, which was very good. But they were running short of one person which they wanted to add on as a consultant into their team. So they got hold of another orthopedic specialist after a lot of interviews, and he got embedded into the team. Now, what started occurring was that when patients were coming in, they started preferring the new doctor to the older senior person who was there in the hospital. And that started leading to a very large egoistic clash between the two doctors. How do you avoid this, Rajiv?
Yeah, I'll tell you, Pawan, dealing with doctors is a pain. I have worked with Max, I've worked with Fortis, and I told them very clearly, I'll hire your non-medical staff, I will not hire your doctor, because doctors are, there's a lot of issues. I underwent a knee surgery in October in Mass, and there are two orthopedic surgeons over there. And I know what issues turned up over there. So, the thing is that when the new guy came and he won more patients, we've all been to the doctors. 90% of doctors, before you reach, they open a piece of paper, what's your name and what's your sex, they can see what you are, but they still ask you, what is your age? And before you have even opened your mouth, they start writing the medication. And if a guy listens to you, if there is a doctor who listens to you, may not be the better doctor. That guy is going to take away all the patients. Doctors don't listen. Today, when you run to a doctor or you run to a mother runs with a child to a doctor, she wants somebody to listen to her. Doctors think before you open your mouth, they have understood. And they start writing the medication. If this doctor is there, he may not be a better doctor, but he would be a better listener. And he's got the patient coming to him. We all go to doctors. We've all been to doctors. We want a doctor to listen to our problem. before he starts giving me medication. Because he's charging me 2,000 rupees, I don't want him to give me a medication prescription of 500 rupees. Otherwise, he'll think, what is he charging for? If he only tells me to do gargle, and, it may not be worth charging 2,000 rupees. So doctors don't listen. And that is what I have seen. So this new doctor who has done a good job is not a better doctor, but he was a better listener. That's my viewpoint. And this Navleen has something to say.
Navleen, what would you say to a situation like this?
I live with a doctor and I agree with Rajiv. They are really difficult to deal with. Like, that said, yeah.
And
That said, whether doctors or sorry, go on.
Rajiv's younger brother is one of the best endocrinologists in India.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So he knows.
So he knows it firsthand as well. So, so which is why I could see the passion coming out. But yeah, situations like this, whether it's doctors or it's, sales is another, sort of, I would say, employees who can get into these situations. Well, these are going to happen. There's no real right fix, magic wand to help with these situations. It's up to the individuals. They're mature. We've hired employees. We've not hired kindergarten kids. They're mature individuals. They need to sit and talk it out. So that would be my first thing. sit together and talk out and communicate till it becomes really disruptive, and then it's different. Then you launch formal processes. But as far as I think, when you've hired mature adults into the roles, they've got to learn to deal with it maturely and deal with it amongst themselves. And if they don't deal with it, then it becomes formal. So that's what I've got to say on that.
I want to know incident. There's an office where there's a shared office staff, and a new hire comes in. And so you have one senior person and another person who comes in, and they're sharing the same back office staff. Now, the back office staff gets divided in their role because they're supporting two people. And they suddenly start to support the new person better because he speaks to them better. And the older person starts getting irritated on this account. And there's a lot of friction between the two seniors that starts to occur. And instead of the business going up, it starts to take a downward turn. How would you address this situation?
I think what needs to happen here is real, because the person who's caught in the middle is that admin person or the junior person. And I think what needs to happen is sitting down and talking and clarifying exactly the expectations to that person and having a three-way communication on this basis. If it's affecting business, you would think that both of them would want to resolve the situation. So I think it's sitting together, clarifying, talking, and making sure what the expectations from that person is, whether it is in terms of time they spend with each individual, whether it is in terms of the activities they do for each individual, and kind of work on that basis. And it wouldn't harm to have that conversation where it from the junior person also to the senior guy, whoever is not communicating well, for them to highlight to that person that the reason perhaps I'm getting more attracted to work with the other individual is your communication style, and I would appreciate a change in the communication style, because sometimes these kind of open communications, I think, are needed to resolve such situations.
I like to. Hello, Pawan. Hello.
Yes.
I have a question to ask the speakers. We are taking the argument of doctors, back to the generalists and the specialists. I'm not saying specialists in terms of orthopedics. I am saying specialists in terms of a doctor, and generalists in terms of a HR expert, or general in terms of somebody else like me. The question is, this is a long drawn controversy for years, whether a generalist is good or a specialist is good. Specialists think that he is the best. Generalists think, no, he doesn't know much, so we have to teach him. So anyway, my point is, when you hire people, what will be your thought process? Will you like to have a person who is only in one skill? specialization. Today is the age of specialization. Will you like to have only those people who are only specialists in one skill? Or you like to have a person who is in multi-skills and is able to do many jobs? What is your experience? Will you be able to retain and have savings if he is multi-skill and is able to deliver his job? Or only uni-skill, expert in his skill and is high-headed? No, this is so, the organization may like it or not, I want to do. From your experience, how do you want to hire a person? Whether he have 2, 3 skills expertise or only one skill. Today is the age where skilling, minute scale you are going to skilling. As HRD persons, what do you think about that?
Okay, I'll answer this. I have a very, very unique organization. I have a very clearly defined set of 7 attributes. And I choose people on those attributes. If you have 70-75% of those attributes, you are a go. I do not hire from competition. Do not hire. I will hire an air hostess, I will hire a nurse, I will hire a teacher, I will hire anybody, except for few positions that are highly, highly technical, because I am very in depth into, deep into the tech-enabled business, the startup ecosystem, where I need a different type of people. I hire for attributes and not for skills, because every skill you can teach a person. Today, you want to make a bomb, it takes you 10 minutes to go on Google and make a bomb. I go for basically attributes, because I spend a lot of time in teaching and training my people. And I have very well-defined attributes. My attributes are very well-defined. I check for those attributes, and the interview process starts with my son, my elder son, who's a director in the company. The second is my younger son, and third is me. And between the 3 of us, we decide whether this person has the skills, has the attributes we are looking for. And I do not look for skills, because I will train him for skills. So, there's nothing to it. Most of our businesses are common sense. Most of information is available. It's not that way you don't have information. So if a person does not have that information, you can teach a person any information. I have worked merchant navy. Then I went to hotels. I went to manufacturing. I did mushroom farming, and I'm doing headhunting. I didn't have any of these skills. I learned. Everywhere I learned. Navleen would have been in many industries which had nothing to do with the previous industry.
That means you are sporting the view that is mostly the attitude, you say, or personality traits of the person.
Yes, today, because today your past skills are not of use. You tell me one thing, today the payments are being made online. You're not using cash.
No, my submission is that in your organization, probably out of experience, or maybe because of your sons being expert in some field, they may be able to. In fact, I want to ask another question. The ones you select are final selection, or they are ultimately approved by the organization? Just a personal question, because that will elaborate me further. If you are only hiring for them and submitting a list, and in turn the organization has to select, that means ultimate analysis of the candidate will depend on the organization. But if you select them and they are finally accepted, that means this is left to you. Now, my submission is that if you select a man from the hospital industry or hospitable industry, or on the other side, Tata Iron, irons industry or cement industry, if you select a man, may not be. In your case, I'm saying a different thing. Maybe you have, but another organization, which is intermediary organization, may not be having that expertise which the organization may be having. So the question will be only by going by the traits of personality, or only going by the attitude of person. Very well. I'll feel like that. Journalists, we normally feel that we are selected all India services people. There will be a lot of fight between the journalists and the technocrats, that we all go by journalists and we want to assume vis-a-vis the technocrats. In your case, it's a multi sort of job you have to select. How do you fit in that? How do you manage?
I have just selected a consultant who's from steel industry in Bhilai. She's based in Bhilai. She has not come to Delhi as yet. And she is into the manufacturing industrial segment. And we are training her online. I mean, she does not have any background of any other industry. She's worked 8 years in the steel industry. I pick up people from hospitality and put them into consumer. I need people with certain attributes. I'm not talking of traits. I'm not talking of personality. I'm talking of attributes. Today, let me tell you one thing. One of the most important attributes that you're looking for is a common sense. And I'm not talking of the normal common sense where you cross a road and look and left and right. I'm talking of common sense where you have never, ever faced a situation before. How will you face it today? Because your past, we are facing situations. Today, we are facing pandemic. How do I move forward? I've never faced such a situation. People are going into the market, people are dying, people are doing, and yet within 7 days of opening, everybody's gone out to Shimla. Shimla is full. So I need somebody who has got certain attributes. So common sense is one. You're talking of knowledge. You know something? How many people apply knowledge? It's not the knowledge which is important. It is the application of knowledge which is important. We have got all the knowledge in the world. 80% of the people never apply that knowledge in practical life. And I need people who can apply knowledge. Knowledge is free. Knowledge has no value. You can just click on a button and you can, what do you want to know? You want to know how an electric vehicle works? You know what is neuroscience? Everything is available. You know, you read about happiness chemicals today, you can use how you can release happiness chemicals in your people and make them happy.
I just want to cut in between. I think we're running out of time now. And I'd like the president to sort of take over now and wind up the proceedings for the day.
No other questions?
No more questions now, sir. We run out of time.
I have the time. I have no problem.
Thank you very much, both the speakers.
Nobody from the audience has asked anything.
And I'm very happy that I have been able to listen to from first point, Rajiv. Immediately my network was on when Rajiv talked. That means he has that, attributes and attitude to make the network on, because no sooner he started speaking, my network was on and I could hear right from beginning to end. A very, very experienced person and who has delivered a very practical point of view, how to hire and how to fire, or if at all you have to fire, or there's a need of firing or not. If the right hiring is there, probably there may not be need of firing also. And Navleen, thank you very much. You have gone into a very structured sort of discussion, A to Z, everything on the basis of your experience, as well as I would say that as they consider an HRD man, they structure most of the things and they go into structure. Maybe there are differences of views on certain issues with the people, but I am very sure that there are many things to take home. And most of the delegates must have enjoyed the deliberations. We are very, very thankful to the delegates also who have joined us from various countries. And with these words, I once again for the
I just want to say one thing to Navleen. Navleen, I really liked one point of yours, really stood out, was re-engineering your processes through exit interviews. I missed that point. That was a very, very relevant point. I think very, very important point. I missed it out. I do it, but I missed out on saying, and thank you for covering that point, because that's a very, very important lesson. How do you re-engineering your entire process through exit interviews? So I thought that was very, very something I missed out. So thank you for covering it.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure to be part of this discussion. So thank you all.
So our next webinar is going to be on another very important subject, that is good operational management for higher goals. The better the operational management, the higher the goals you can achieve. And this subject will be discussed at length. We are getting again very learned speakers. And this is due on 23rd of July, again 6 p.m. And I'm sure the delegates who have attended this webinar have heard so scintillating discussions will be able to note down this thing, this our webinar, and try to attend this webinar. I'm sure you will enjoy. And once again, I thank everyone who have been here with us and who have joined us on this webinar. And thank you very much. Thank you indeed.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you, Navleen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to both the speakers. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Very learning.
Both the
A
speakers.
great learning
Thank
experience
you, sir.
today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now you
Welcome.
have to apply everything.
Good evening.
आपने पूजा बंद ही कर दिया था।